They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
All right, thank you guys for everybody who's reached out to me over the past 48 hours. Little update, I am still doing fine. For whatever reason, I am one of the few apartments in downtown Austin that they decided to still continue having power with, to still have water. So I think we can all assume that's because they understand these fantasy flock videos need to be made. They need to get done. No questions asked. So I'm going to continue to try to get y'all one every single day, of course. We are still in the middle of everything. Everything is kind of shutting down. Apartments are failing. So if we have anything go wrong, I may not be able to get y'all a video tomorrow, but I am going to continue to try my best. And what I did for this video, very simple. I just went over to Twitter for everybody who is following us on Twitter, and I sent out a tweet saying, hey, reply to this tweet with any fantasy basketball question you have, and I'll answer it in the next video. So that's what we're going to be doing. Grabbed screenshots from Twitter and going to be popping them up on the screen, breaking them down. And if you have any of your own questions, I will be doing videos like this in the future where I can break them down in depth, but that's going to be done on Twitter. That's going to be done on Instagram. I'll make sure I leave those on the screen for y'all. And any questions that I can shortly answer, please go down there and just leave them in the comment section. And if this video gets over 100 likes by the end of the day today, I will go through and answer every single question that y'all left down there in the comment section. And while you're down there, answer some fellow flock members, answer some other people's questions in the flock. That way we can all work together to continue to dominate our fantasy basketball leagues. All right, well, let's get our first question up here. And this question is pretty much asking, do I drop CJ McCollum? I have a ton of players injured on my roster. I have Paul George, I have Anthony Davis, I have McCollum, and I am currently 4-3. So I'll say a couple things here. I mean, if you have these studs lined up throughout your roster and you are only 4-3, I'm assuming that this is going to be a very shallow league where obviously if you're playing in a league that's 10, 12 teams, you never, ever consider dropping a player like CJ. We understand the elite level of production that he can give you, and he's coming back in early March. At least that's what's reported. And we know it's a little bit of a different situation for the Trailblazers where CJ can't necessarily just ease himself back in. He can't take an extra 2 to 3 weeks off because this team is always fighting for their seed. This team is always trying to climb their way up to the Western Conference top. And we know how difficult that is to do with some of those elite teams like the Clippers, like the Lakers, like the Jazz. So I think as soon as McCollum is good to start playing, he is going to be out there. That should be early March. And on the case of Paul George, I know you're a little bit worried there, but he's going to be back so soon. Literally any day now, we'll have Paul George back in the lineup for the Los Angeles Clippers. And then Anthony Davis, I know this was an injury that made headlines. I know everybody has been talking about the AD injury over, I don't know, the past week or so. But the reasoning behind that is just because Anthony Davis is a top 3 player in the NBA. It's just because he is playing on by far and away the best NBA franchise. So I think that his injury scare is a little bit overblown, where right now he's being reported to come back in early March, around March 10th. But I will say, in the exact opposite case of a CJ McCollum, here I think the Los Angeles Lakers are going to not necessarily be forced to make sure that Anthony Davis comes back at 100%, but I think they're going to be taking their time. They're going to make sure that AD has all the time he needs. He's probably going to take an extra week or two from the safe point of him to come back just to make sure, because this team doesn't need a seed. This team doesn't need to be the 1 seed. They don't need to be the 2 seed, especially when there's not going to be fans in LA and they're not really playing for too much there. I think that they just make sure that they're 100% good to go for the playoffs and not worry too much about the regular season. But regardless, I know that was a lot. I just wanted to cover some of the major injuries that we've seen across the NBA so far. And here with CJ, no, you can't drop him under any circumstance, really, even if this is a very shallow league. Please just stick it out. You're 4-3, so maybe you drop the next 2. Maybe you fall to, like, just say 4-5 by the time CJ comes back. But then you'll have CJ coming back in, and you'll be right back up there with a dominant team. All right, so now our next league is, should I come out here and should I trade Mitch Robinson for Kelly Olynyk? And I understand that Robinson is the much better player, but with his injury, it's going to kind of handicap me going forward. And this question was actually very, very close. I had to dive into it. I had to look into the current numbers for both of these players because as soon as I heard the names, I mean, Kelly by no means is a great player for a category league as he's shooting 42% from the field. Robinson, on the other hand, also not a great player for a category league, as if you look at his free throw percentage, literally it's under 50%. I know he's not shooting a ton of free throws, but still, that's a number that is going to definitely hurt you in that type of category. So neither one of these players makes a ton of sense for a category league versus a points league. So we really don't need to focus in too much on that. What we need to focus in on is the fact that Robinson is going to be out about a month for the New York Knicks. And obviously for Miami, Kelly is going to be 100% healthy. He's playing pretty much every game this season. So let's look at the other categories on what these players are providing you. And right now with Robinson, I mean, he was averaging this season close to 9 points a game, close to 9 rebounds a game, no assist, but that's not something you were expecting when you were drafting Robinson. And he also is great in blocks, steals, and turnovers. Turnovers is something we want to point out for those category leagues. If you can kind of stack your roster up with some off-the-ball players, I think that is going to help you in the type of format, and that's exactly what you have here with the Robinson. While he's not going to be coming through and giving you 20 points a game, the very minimum, you're going to get the rebounds, you're going to get the blocks, steals, and very, very limited turnovers. Now, on the other hand, with Kelly, we go over and we go, okay, he can shoot the three ball. I mean, he is making 2 threes a game. We know that's something that Robinson just can't do. They're close to each other in points per game, with Kelly averaging 10. Rebounds is where you get the significant drop-off, where Kelly comes down to 5.5. And then assist, about the same. I mean, Kelly averaging 2 assists. That's not going to make a difference regardless. So I will say that I hate to give this answer, as it's very boring, and I wish we would have had this information in the tweet. But it's going to come down entirely to, what is your record? I mean, if you're a team right now that is sitting very pretty, maybe you've only had 1 or 2 losses, and you were just coasting to the fantasy basketball playoffs, in that case, I want Robinson. But maybe you're on the opposite end. Maybe for whatever reason, you've only been able to scrape together 2 or 3 wins, and you're like, you know what? I can't wait another month for Robinson to come back. I need to start winning games now. Then that's when I'll just make the trade, even though I think you are going to be losing out on a points per game basis. All right, so now our next tweet that we got to go over is actually a 2-part tweet. The first question is, should I pick up Sadiq Bey or Gallinari? And here, let's just break down both of these players. They're very, very, very similar, to be honest, where we know both of them are going to be big-time 3-point shooters. Sadiq Bey right now has been on fire from 3. Now, I know if you look at his season-long numbers, they don't necessarily look great. He's only averaging about 9 points a game right now. But you look at the past month, you look at how he has been shooting. I mean, he has been on fire for the Detroit Pistons. And really, nothing outside of that. I mean, he's not going to be giving you a ton of defensive statistics. He's not going to be giving you a ton of assists or rebounds. He's literally only averaging 1 assist a game. But on the other hand, when we look at Gallinari, we know that this is pretty much the same exact player. He's going to be giving you nothing on defense. He's only averaging 1 assist a game himself. He's actually averaging less rebounds at only 3 rebounds a game. But he's going to be giving you that 3-point production. So when we are looking at 2 players that are very similar, generally what I like to do is I like to go with the younger guy who I perceive to have more upside. And that's going to be Sadiq Bey. I mean, Bey right now is only 21 years old. We know Gallinari has been in the NBA for a very long time. So I think Gallinari is going to be the player with the higher floor. Sadiq Bey is going to be the player with the higher ceiling. And if you're making a pickup from the waiver wire, I'm always going to be trying to go with the guy who has the ceiling and not the floor. All right, so now our next question pretty much is from that same tweet. And this one is, do you want Garland or Derek White? And here, let's go through. Let's compare both of these players. And I was a little bit surprised whenever we got this question because I know Derek White's coming off a game where he saw 25 points against the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, he looked like a difference maker in that game for the San Antonio Spurs. And I'll say I've been a San Antonio Spurs fan for a very long time. Not so much anymore, as generally I don't like the way that the team went. I don't like the trade that they made for DeMar DeRozan. And obviously, once they did that, kind of fractured my fandom from the franchise. But anyway, Derek White, he dropped that 25-point game against the New Orleans Pelicans recently. And outside of that, if you look at what he's done this season, really not impressive. I mean, he is accruing less than 4 assists a game, less than 2 rebounds a game. He's shooting less than 40% from the field. So really, with Derek White, I know he can flash here or there, but he really does not have any upside at all. And with Darius Garland, on the other hand, I mean, just like I was talking about with Sadiq Bey, here I think he actually does have some upside, as this is a player who was drafted with the 5th pick overall only recently by the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's only 21 years old, and he's been a lot more consistent than Derek White at the same time. He's actually averaging 16 points a game, okay, from beyond the arc. And I know rebounds, assists aren't necessarily going to be fantastic, but when you compare him to Derek White, I mean, he's still giving you 5 assists a game. So yeah, here I think we are going to be wanting Darius Garland over Derek White. All right, so now our next tweet that we need to pull up, we need to look at is, should I sell high on Jonas Valanciunas before Jaren Jackson Jr. comes back? And here I love this question. And Valanciunas has looked fantastic as of late, averaging close to 30 minutes a game, shooting 60% from the field, 11 rebounds a game, 16 points a game. Valanciunas has been someone that has been a consistent playmaker for your fantasy basketball roster. And I know we had either Garrett or Johnny, whoever was on the Fantasy News and Brews Twitter that day, coming out saying, no, I don't want to sell high on Jonas Valanciunas. He is a fantastic player. And I will say, I agree with that sentiment. I agree that he is a fantastic player. But in certain scenarios, I do want to be selling high on Jonas. Jaren Jackson Jr. is supposed to be coming back early March, mid-March. We know that the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be in a spot that it makes sense for them to bring Jaren Jackson Jr. back pretty much as fast as they can, as they want to get those minutes in. They want to see how this new rotation is going to look like with a fully emerged Ja Morant. But with Valanciunas, if you are a team that is currently maybe sitting around 500, maybe you're sitting a little worse than 500, I definitely want to be keeping him on our roster. Whereas if you are a team that is completely dominant, say you've only had 1 or 2 losses this season so far, that's where I want to be selling him high. I'll definitely ride out another week or 2 of production, but then I would want to be looking at what I can sell. Maybe I can use him in a package to upgrade a starting spot. All right, so now our last question that we're getting asked is from Johnny and Garrett from Fantasy News and Brews, and they're pretty much asking us a very simple question. They're asking us, would we prefer having Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic for the rest of the season? And very simple here. I mean, on so many different reasons, we're going to be going with Jokic. Y'all know Jokic is a player that I loved coming into the season because of how we projected him with his assist. And on the case of Joel Embiid, I'll be completely honest. I did not necessarily target him as much as we should have coming into the year because he does have question marks around him. We know with Embiid that he is going to miss games. He is not going to be playing as many games as Nikola Jokic. And when they're both up there with the same elite production, I think that we are going to be going with the player that is easily going to play more games. And I don't really even need to think about it, regardless of if this is a points league, a category league. We're going to be going with Nikola Jokic. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.